Good morrow, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Fantasy Folk, where we discuss all things in the fantasy genre, from books and games to television and film. My name is Jordan, and with me as my traveling companion down these fantastical roads is Ron. How are you today, Ron?
Doing good, man. I'm especially proud of you today too. You nailed the intro this time. You had it pulled up, ready to go, and here we are. But no, man, I'm good. This is kind of the first time on this show that we've just kind of sat down and broke down the recent kind of news. You know what I mean? Very
Mm-hmm.
much in the way that we do our other shows. So I'm excited to kind of get into a few different things with you here tonight.
Yeah, so we'll kind of also give our thoughts on like the state of Lord of the Rings, the state of Game of Thrones, news about those properties, and just thoughts on House of the Dragon as well. Probably we're gonna try to keep it not an overly long episode, of course. So if we don't cover something I just said, that'll probably be next time. Um, aiming for the typical hour, not going for an hour and a half, 2 hour episode
Yeah.
here. So yeah, where do we want to start at? I know we got some video game news. Maybe we want to dive into that first.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just given that it seems like once we dive into the whole state of thing, those will be probably the meatier conversations. But yeah, to your point, we've got a couple different pieces of video game news. I guess we could probably start with The Witcher because then our next one will just lead right into our state of here. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, or first, I should say. The Witcher is one that I just recently kind of got into thanks to your recommendation. I played The Witcher 3, loved it and all that, but you are definitely the resident kind of Witcher expert of the team here. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts as we hear that The Witcher 4 is now officially in production. There's no room. It's not a rumor anymore. It's not pieces are moving behind the scenes. Like, no, it is full scale in production now.
Yeah, they've been. I think they officially announced this a while ago that they were going to be making Witcher 4. Like, oh my god, it had to be like years and years ago at this point. But it was one of those things that was kind of far off. They were dealing with Cyberpunk. They were dealing with the fallout of Cyberpunk. The Witcher remaster. Like the PS5 version of The Witcher 3. They are also working on, I think, a Witcher 1 remake or remaster that they're
Oh,
another crew is working for underneath of them. Um,
nice.
and then we have this game, Witcher 4, which they've said a lot. Witcher 3 is the end of Geralt's story, so I would assume this is going to either have like either a customizable main Witcher, somebody somewhere they can expand the franchise and have people dive into it without the baggage of potentially those previous three games. I would also wouldn't bet against it having a different title than Witcher 4.
Mm.
Maybe The
Kind of like the
Witcher.
third one was what, the Wild Hunt, kind of
Yeah,
like
but
an
that was like
extra
Witcher 3.
tagline.
Well, I would assume this might be more like The Witcher colon something else,
Okay,
and leave out the 4 to not scare away people that are going to start a new franchise. Not that it always
like
does, right?
like Rebirth or something.
Like
Yeah.
GTA 6, is going to sell to people that haven't played 5, haven't played 4, or whatever. Um, Sometimes those things are an issue, though, when you get to high number for video
Mhm.
games. Sometimes it works well. Final Fantasy does not care that they're on number, however, 14, 15, whatever number they're on, 16. Um, for that. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I kind of just want more of that world. I love that game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Haven't had a chance to really continue my playthrough lately with how busy I've been, but just um, can't wait to see what they do with it, especially once they do the remaster for the first game or when that comes out remake. I have the first game. I haven't played it yet. It's on my Steam account, but
What was it? Was it originally what, like PS2 or 3?
I think it was I think it was the PS3 generation. I'll double
Okay.
check here.
Well, yeah.
Because I'm not, it's just it was one that I didn't really get a chance to play on the other systems. So it was Yeah, like the Xbox 360, I think.
Okay, so yeah, that would be like PS3 kind of era.
Oh no, the first game came out just on Microsoft Windows and OS. That was
Oh,
in November. That was in 2007.
oh wow. Okay, so that was, it was just strictly a PC game.
That's what it says here on. Well, let me see if it
Interesting.
got a
Yeah, we don't
re-release.
have to get too bogged down by the details, but that's surprising. I would have never thought that. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked too, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think there is one thing that I would like to see in this one, and it's one of those things that it's not even so much a knock on The Witcher itself as much as it's kind of a thing that a lot of open world games fall into the trap of. I don't know if you felt this way, and we've talked about this game a little bit, off screen, and I don't think I've ever run this one by you, but the one complaint I have is that it felt like a lot of the side missions and the sort of job posting like bounties all felt a little redundant, especially as you got towards the end, and it's like, okay, I feel like I've done this exact same sort of side quest 4 different times already, just with like a little bit of a different template over it. And again, that's not just a Witcher problem. That is an open world RPG problem basically across the board. Very few games have found a way to do that right and make them all like feel distinct. Like I feel like Spider-Man 2 was one of those that really kind of finally started to get it in that way, whereas each side mission felt genuinely like it had its own identity. I would just like to see a lot more of that in this one. And I didn't have many knocks on The Witcher 3 in my playthrough. I loved it. I thought it was an amazing game, but that would probably be the top of my list. And I don't think it would be that hard to just give each of these side missions maybe a little more of their own personal identity.
So Witcher 2 came out on 360 and computer. So no PlayStation on Witcher 2. So Witcher
Okay.
3 was the only one that had a PS release. Um,
Interesting.
I can kind of see what you mean if it comes to like contracts and stuff, but for a lot of the
Yeah.
other side missions, I felt like there was some good variety. I mean, there's always like you have to use your Witcher senses and
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
that determine stuff. But I think some of the story based ones on those were really cool. Like there's one about a guy that turns into a werewolf. Did you do that one?
I believe so. Yeah.
And like it turns out like the what the wife's friend or whatever uh kind of lured the wife to find out he's a werewolf,
Mm-hmm.
so he kills her and stuff. Yeah, like I mean,
Yes, yes.
I
Okay, now
love
that you
that
see,
one.
yes, I 1000% did play that one. Yes.
Yeah, I love that one so much. So, um, yeah, I think like you'll obviously see like a revamp and maybe how it's maybe done. I mean, we're going to be going to more than 10 years since the game released by the time that between games here. So I'm assuming we'll definitely see an increase of variety of missions or maybe like more tangential stuff. It'll also help that it's not like probably connected to somebody else's story. If we're not following along with
Yeah.
Geralt, I'm thinking that might help for them to have a little bit more free reign with those
Hmm.
side missions, especially because it was the third game and it was Geralt was a star in in that world,
Yeah.
that people had heard of him and stuff like that. You won't have to probably worry about that in Witcher 4 if they unless they were going to do something like following Siri. But I'm assuming they'll just follow an unnamed
No.
Witcher that you can do
Yeah, I
whatever with.
think they'll kind of go the Skyrim route where you get to create your own character and probably come up through the ranks and begin your sort of journey as a Witcher and all that stuff, kind of starting from scratch.
Yeah, and then we had a. Do we want to talk about this before we get into the state of Game of Thrones? But like a Game of Thrones video game?
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
me
Let's
about it.
chat
I'd
about.
never heard about this until you shared it.
No, me neither. As a matter of fact, it's funny because this is something that I've been clamoring
Same.
for a while. And meanwhile, apparently it was there were plans for it for years, and none of us had an idea. But I was so stoked to see this and all of the little bit of footage that we got from it, even though it doesn't seem like most of it was gameplay footage. Uh, seemed really great. the biggest thing I'm excited for, and it's something that always I've always wanted to see in Game of Thrones is like we see Winterfell, we see King's Landing, we see all of these kingdoms and stuff, and we'll get bits and pieces of characters on the road in specific places and stuff. But this is the first time that we are going to genuinely see the full scope of Westeros. You know what I mean? Like we're going to see every single nook and cranny and little road that, these book maps and these other things just can't really cover. You know what I mean? Sort of those the paths in between, as it were. I'm very excited to get a whole new perspective on Westeros through the lens of this show. So I am beyond stoked. And my only hope is that it isn't one of these projects that goes through development hell and it's like, yeah, it's on. It's not like kind of like this Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake that they announced and then it's been, you know, crickets ever since. I just really hope this project gets the proper backing and care and push that it deserves. But I am all the way in. Everything that we have seen so far, sign me up.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like is this a console game? Like do we actually know that or is it
I believe so. I would be pretty shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah, I know they said that they wanted to make more. I don't know, it says it's coming out on iOS and Android. Kings Road?
What?
Yeah.
Oh no, this changes everything, Jordan. Oh my god. What? This is a mobile game?
That it says open world RPG. I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling up more stuff here about it.
Those things almost feel like counteractive to each other. How can you have an open world RPG only on mobile? That's insane to me.
Yeah, yeah,
We
it's
should have done more research before this
only
episode.
announced for iOS and Android. Well,
That
cuz
is
the trailer didn't
fucking sane,
the
dude.
trailer didn't look anything like a mobile game. That's why I'm really
No,
confused. But I went to the
it it,
website and it only
it had
had
like Witcher vibes.
yeah, when I go to the website, it only had the iOS and Android logos, and I'm like, what? So I had to like double check here.
Wow, that is very unfortunate. I'm kind of kicking myself that we didn't do a little more research on it before this episode. Forgive us, everyone, because
Dude, if
like
we
that
got
would
your
have
hopes up.
totally changed my opening spiel into a much more critical one, I guess. Because like, what you finally decide to, and again, this is assuming that it's only going to be on mobile. For all we know, as we get closer, they could say it's actually going to be on all these things, but usually you don't see that. You don't see a game that's coming out on iOS and Android that also comes out for, PS5 and all that stuff. At least not right away. Uh so yeah, I'm oh god, no, that's the opposite of what I wanted to hear. That is so unfortunate. Like you finally get something like this put together, something that a lot of people have been clamoring for a while, and then you just pigeonhole it into being a mobile game. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it doesn't even look anything mobile game-ish. So like, here's my worries about it is that it's gonna have like big monetization and stuff. And how do
Oh
you,
yeah,
yeah, how
yeah.
do you have an open
Microtransactions.
world RPG? I don't know. Is it actually going to be open world too? Like, I don't know if I can trust that because it seems like you're very focused on the Jon Snow White Walker storyline. So I'm like, is it? King's Road makes me think I should be able to go throughout the whole King's Road though. So maybe I
That's what.
am.
Yeah, yeah. That's what.
I don't know.
Man, that is weird. That is. I feel like we just gotta kind of wait and see for some more information on this one. I guess.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. And maybe it will get um a console release as well. I don't know, but like for now, it's only confirmed for Android and iOS devices. Now, this website says PC as well, which would be a little bit better. But I can't
Yeah.
find that on any other website, so I don't know how much to.
All
Believe
right.
that.
So then it
Yeah.
seems like we're just at a point here where there's a lot of mixed messaging on this
Yeah.
project. So I guess there's not really much to
Jury's
say if
out.
we don't. Yeah. Yeah, there's not really too much to say if we're still kind of in this state of flux with it. Man, that's such a bummer. I've been looking like ever since I sent that to you, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. I've had this thing on my mind like every day. Like that is going to be such a bummer if this is not a console game. Oh God.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes from there. I guess we can start transitioning to
Yeah. Yeah.
our other stuff here.
Yeah.
Um, so we have we'll start with State of the Lord of the Rings. I think
Okay.
let's do that. I maybe because I'll end up maybe being more positive about the State of Lord of the Rings than the state of Game of Thrones, especially after George's last post. Interview that he had. We do know a few things coming up next week or what? Yeah, a week from now.
Yeah. Week
Um,
from today.
Hunt for what is it called? War of the Rohirrim.
War of the Rohirrim. Yes.
Animated anime style Lord of the Rings film. Um, Coming out December 12th. We're gonna have a review on it. I just don't know when I'll be able to see it right away. I doubt I'll be able to see it right away. But we'll have something throughout the month of December or early January about it. Um, it is I've kind of purposely stayed away from stuff about it. Like I watched one trailer and I just haven't really I know it takes place apparently like 183 years before the trilogy. That's all I really know about it, and I don't know how to really feel about it. Look, anime is not typically my style. I'm a Pokemon fan, but like more so for the game than the cartoon. But I grew up with the cartoon, but I don't
Mhm.
watch like a lot of anime stuff. So I don't know. I can get past that though. Like my adventures with Superman, which is very much inspired by anime designs. I love that show. So if the movie's good, the movie's good. I just wonder like, is it good?
Well, it's one of those projects that almost feels a bit like, oh, we might lose the rights to the Lord of the Rings if they don't put a movie in theaters. So we kind of have to get something out there because everything about this movie indicates that it should totally be like a straight to streaming animated project, right? Very much in the way that DC does their HBO straight to home video kind of movies. It seems like it should very much be one of those, but it's not. And as you mentioned to me the other day, it doesn't seem like it's tracking very well for the opening week. Um, there has not been much advertising about this project. I'll tell you that much. I have not seen a single commercial for it. I have not seen any kind of online presence outside of when I'll pop onto the Fantasy Folk account because that account is so fantasy concentrated and our algorithm is so tuned into this kind of thing that I've seen a couple things on it, but even that has been few and far between. So I don't know if they have much faith in the project. Like I said, I think it might just be one of those situations where they had to put something in theaters or else they were going to lose the rights.
Well,
With that said,
I
oh,
have to
okay.
say real quick, you're right. And there is actually a thing. It says the film was announced in June 2021, and development was fast tracked to prevent New Line Cinema from losing the film rights for Tolkien
Okay.
novels.
Okay. Well, there we
There you
go.
go.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, that is the case, but at the same time, I still have faith that it could be a good project and fun and kind of a different sort of spin on Lord of the Rings than we're used to. Again, being in that kind of anime sort of style. It's one of those things that uh, even if I wasn't super interested in the prospect of what the story could be, I would still check it out just based on the prospect of like, oh, Lord of the Rings, but like anime. That's kind of cool. One way or the other, I got to see what that's all about. So I'll check it out. I'm sure it'll. I have faith that it'll be good. If it if it's anything like the, well, I guess I can't say if it's anything like the Rings of Power, because they are two very separate entities that are creating this. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be good, but I also acknowledge that this was not a project made because somebody had a great idea and they were like, we cannot not make this movie. You know what I mean? It was more like, no, we have to make this movie.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe somebody did write it originally, and then it sat in a vault, and they're like, "Well, we're running out of the time, so we'll just polish this one up." But
Yeah.
um, so from what I see here is the director got involved, and then they brought in producer Philippa Boyens, who also co-wrote Jackson's film trilogy, and also two writers, Addis and Matthews. Then two other writers rewrote the script, which is based on details in the appendices of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. That's everybody's favorite thing, is the appendices. Covering the history of Rohan's rulers. And they're choosing to focus on Helm's unnamed daughter, but they named her in the film as Hera. It takes visual inspiration from the Jackson films. And Miranda Otto is reprising her role as Eowyn. So I'm guessing this will start off with
Oh,
some sort of
shoot.
like modern day thing, and then they flash back or something. I don't know why else she would be in it. I'm
I mean,
I'm like,
I mean, is she an elf? Because like I
no,
feel
she's
like
just a human.
just a human. Okay, huh? I was gonna say because that would kind of track with their long lifespans and such, but hmm, don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for it a bit, but it's not like one I'm like counting down for. I'm not like looking at the clock like, when's December 13th getting here? I need to see War of the
Yeah.
Rohirrim. But look, it'll be. It is based off some of the lore, which is what I was wondering. Like, are they just making something up, or are they going through it? I just do, and I put part of the blame on the Tolkien family as well here, the estate, that they don't let a lot of people adapt stuff that is outside of the Lord of the Rings and the appendices. Like they
Yeah.
don't usually let people deal with the Silmarillion. They don't usually let people deal with any of that stuff. So much so that like the Rings of Power people have to go to the estate and get permission for certain names and stuff. So it puts New Line and I guess WB in very particular circumstances where if they want to keep the rights, they're going to start churning out stuff that does like this War of the Rohirrim,
Yeah.
Hunt for Gollum, which I'm actually pretty excited for. But
Yeah.
it is a very odd pick. But you know why that's the pick is because it's something that's detailed in the appendices, and that's what they have the rights to. So
Yeah.
without remaking the original trilogy, their thoughts are we can scour the appendices and pick out the most interesting stories if we want to keep the rights. And I know what you could think as well is, well, you told your story, maybe let the rights lapse. That's never going to happen.
No, no, not with an IP this popular. It like in a day and age now where original projects like they have to be 10 out of 10 to be able to have staying power. Yeah, no, you're not giving up something like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Um, how do you feel? We're kind of a quick little side tangent here. How would you feel? And I'm sure anybody who's like a diehard Lord of the Rings, like Tolkien sort of classic fan would probably, punch me in the face for saying this. But how would you feel about the idea of original projects that are in this world but don't necessarily follow any of the source material? How would you feel about something like that? I will preface it by saying that I doubt, knowing Tolkien's estate, I doubt they
Yeah,
would
I don't
ever
think
let
they'll
it
allow
happen.
it. Yeah.
They would never. But just, like, would that be something you would be into?
Um, yeah. Here's my thing. I think people take all of this stuff too seriously. We're talking
Agreed.
about Star Wars, when we're talking about Tolkien, when we're talking about comic books, we're talking about any of that stuff. People take it too seriously. And what I mean by that is let there be interpretations, let there be adaptations, let there be like stuff that happens in this. And you know what? It doesn't actually affect the books at all. You can go
No.
back and look at the books. Um, I don't think any of that really harms anything. Like, I would love to see an original story set in Middle Earth. Um, and that's probably what this will mostly be, War of the Rohirrim, because I don't think there's enough to really probably talk about it in the appendices. So it's probably going to be a lot of just making it up as they go type of thing,
Yeah.
with little references here and there. But like, same thing with like Star Wars, or we see this kind of thing online with like Star Wars with comic books, where it's very, this isn't comic accurate. Why is this a thing? But then they ignore the non-comic accurate stuff that they grew up with just because of the
Yeah.
nostalgia.
Yeah.
If they had tried to make Tom Holland Spider-Man have webs that came out naturally, there had been people throwing a fit. But when it was Tobey Maguire, it was fine, because you know what? People probably grew up not knowing that he originally made his own webs. So they just, whatever. That's what they know.
Yeah.
But people with like how they react with Rings of Power and everything, and we talked about it on this show before. But Rings of Power a lot is making up stuff as they go, but using the appendices as a guide, or
Mhm.
truncating the time, and people act very vehemently against that. But it it's whatever. The main source is still there. If you enjoy it, just ignore the other stuff. If you don't like it, don't watch it. And guess what? The more that they get the diminished returns on stuff, the less that they'll try to save this franchise. So what I mean by is that they're gonna not ever let the franchise go. It's because they want the rights to what they see as a valuable franchise. That may change throughout time if it ends up like every new Lord of the Rings movie they get just doesn't make any money because people aren't interested. Then they'll stop trying to force it. But at the end of the day, it's whatever. You can either choose to see it or not. Just don't take it so seriously where you're throwing fits online or going after the creators.
Yeah. No, I agree completely, dude. I agree completely.
We kind of also started off the show on the same page with that because we talked about The Witcher 4 not having any basis on Geralt and his
Yeah.
story, and that, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's one of those things. It would be nice to see, but like we said, given the state of the estate, as it were,
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that we will ever see. Same thing probably goes for Westeros. I'd imagine. I don't think we'll ever see anything there that's just an entire new reimagining. You know what I mean? Or a totally original story. I don't think it's something we'll ever see there too. I wonder why that is. Like, because in other mediums we will see that. Like, there are a lot of originals, and I guess obviously the difference is that there isn't years and years and years of books that came before the movies with Star Wars and stuff. But like, we'll see even like comic book adaptations of superheroes and stuff. A lot of them very much take their own route and deviate from the comics. Like, they'll still have little aspects here and there, but are largely their own original stories. I wonder why in the fantasy genre itself, it's such a hard and fast thing in that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Hunt for Golem, I just want to kind of give an update here because I saw this headline. Um, there was a playlist interview with Lord of the Rings writer Philippa Boyens, who we just talked about. Um, she's also helping write, I think, Hunt for Golem with Peter Jackson, or is producing that movie. She talked about how the film features a prominent role for Aragorn, and they hope to have Viggo Mortensen return.
Mm.
We kind of already know that Ian McKellen's like, hell yeah, get me back in there after I recover
Yeah.
from falling off stage. Um,
And he looked pretty good at the War of the Rohirrim premiere,
yeah,
so I think he's
yeah.
he's getting close.
So she explained how the Hunt for Golem is set during the Fellowship of the Ring era, shortly before Frodo Baggins leaves the Shire for Rivendell. And it begins with Gandalf sending Aragorn on a quest to find Gollum, who the wizard fears may reveal information about the One Ring to Sauron. So Viggo Mortensen's appearance is crucial, but will he return? This is all from the playlist. Uh, this is what she says. Honestly, that's entirely going to be up to Viggo. Collaboratively, we are at a very early stage. I've spoken to Viggo. Andy Serkis has spoken to him. Peter Jackson has spoken to him. We've all spoken to each other, and honestly, I cannot imagine anyone else playing Aragorn, but it will be completely and entirely up to Viggo Mortensen.
He's coming back. You kidding me? They're gonna throw 7 to 8 figures at him, and he's not gonna be able to say no.
I wouldn't be surprised if he. I think before in an interview recently, he said he was maybe a little too old to play Aragorn. I wouldn't be shocked if. Look, we know that the movie has really changed the timelines on stuff. If they kind of like set this a little earlier so that Aragorn actually looks a little younger, they can recast if they want, and um, set it between the Hobbit trilogy and Lord of the Rings instead of it being
Yeah.
like right. So like this kind of takes place, I believe, in the books during Fellowship of the Ring, but it's like during the books of Fellowship of the Ring, that whole like unexpected party to like Frodo leaving takes place years and years. Like there's tons of years in between those, and in like 17 years, I believe.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, that's why like when he comes back, he's like, "Is it secret? Is it safe?" It's like that thing I like threw in a drawer somewhere like years ago. In the book, though, it's like I mean, in the movie, it seems like it's like a week later, right? A couple
That
weeks later.
yeah, very much so.
It's a long time in the book. They could shift the timeline a bit and have like him worried about Gollum before Bilbo's party and be sending Aragorn to look at that. You could have a younger Aragorn that way. That's one way I can kind of think of that happening. But yeah, that's my thought on it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's definitely not. They definitely wouldn't set it after the trilogy. We know that. I don't think that the King of Gondor is going to be going on any side quests to
No,
find
but I
Gollum.
think if they get, well, Gollum is dead too. But I think if they get Vigo back, they could act like it is in the middle of the movie, like before he runs into Strider at
Okay.
the, you know what I'm saying? Like it could be like
Yes.
right after they could act like it's in between there somewhere and make it
It's
be like,
like
here's Vigo.
it's taking place in Act One of Fellowship
Right,
of the
right.
Ring, just not on screen. Yeah, I could. Yeah, that would honestly be the smartest way to do it. And if they marketed it like that, I think that would probably be the way to draw people in the most. Whereas if you're just like, oh, this is a prequel, like I don't know. I almost feel like we are at the point in society where like too many prequels, too many of
Yeah.
this. Oh, this is before the original. Where this it would feel fresh if it was like, no, this is actually a companion to the Fellowship of the Ring that you can go in and watch alongside of that movie. I think that would be
Oh
cool.
boy, does that mean we get a new extended edition where they
Oh
insert
yeah,
this movie in the middle
yeah.
of Fellowship of the Ring?
4 hours and 46 minutes.
Longer than
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you end up getting like a 6-hour movie where you get introduced to all this stuff and you're like, whoa, okay. You spend like 3 hours without Frodo, and then you hit a climax of a totally different movie, and then it comes back to Frodo in the Shire, and you're like, whoa, this is not even close to done yet.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying we'll put them all together and then release it. Okay.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
an
that would be
extended
funny.
edition where it is like Fellowship starts, and then you get this whole movie, and then your
Yeah.
Fellowship continues, and you're like, whoa,
Somebody online will
we'll
clip them
do
all
that. Yeah.
together. I can guarantee you that. Yeah, 1,000%.
I also just saw an article recently that said Rings of Power season 3 is confirmed. I think we've said that a
Mm-hmm.
few times, but just
Yep.
like again, I guess officially confirmed. So for me, with knowing this, War of the Rohirrim, Golem movie, trying to get Vigo back, season 3 of Rings of Power, I'm feeling pretty good about the state of Lord of the Rings and that franchise. We'll see when it actually comes out. Like if War of the Rohirrim's good, if Hunt for Golem is good, Rings of Power, I think, is just going to continue to be this kind of hidden gem a bit for
Mm-hmm.
fantasy folk to discover. But um, I feel pretty good about the state of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so do I. I almost at this point I don't know if I almost feel like Rings of Power kind of lost that hidden gemness to it, as we kind of
Yeah.
crescendoed the end of the last season. Like viewership was sky high. It was the number one show on Amazon for fuck knows however many weeks. Like I think it really took off at the end of season 2, and we are at a point now, and I think I referenced this when we were talking in our finale episode covering the show, where I feel like season 3 is the most crucial renewal you can get in a show. Because season 1, it's like, yeah, we see a lot of things get canceled and not given a shot after one season these days. It just happens. But when you have 2 seasons of a show down, you know what that show is going to be. Like forever and always, you know what that show is going to be in terms of identity, in terms of how people view it. Um, and and it kind of turned on its head from the first season, whereas it was that sort of hidden gem in the rough that I didn't even watch it live in real time. I went back a year later and watched it, but now it felt much more like season 2 felt much more like an event type of show, and the results delivered in terms of viewership and critical reception. So getting that renewal for season 3 makes me very confident that it'll get the full 5 seasons that are planned and that are needed to tell this story. So I'm very confident, like you, and I'd say most confident about Rings of Power, both in terms of its staying power and the story still being good all the way through. I have high hopes going forward.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, am I looking forward to War of the Rohirrim? Am I looking forward to Hunt for Gollum? Yeah, but I really just want Rings of Power season 3.
Same.
Like
Yeah.
that's what I want. And it can create confusion. I really wonder how this is gonna juggle. Like my friend Logan, he was like, he's never seen Lord of the Rings, and he was like, if I were to watch them, like, what's the order? I'm like, just Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King. That's it. He said, what
Yeah.
about the TV shows and the like spin-offs and stuff? I was like, don't worry about it. Just
There's
watch
only one. There's
Fellowship,
only one that's relevant.
Two Towers, Return of the King. I wanted to tell him, like, if you like those, come back to me and I can tell you where to go after that. Like Hobbit trilogy, Rings of Power, War of the Rohirrim, whatever. But like, the way you're gonna like the movie or not is by watching Fellowship of the Ring. And if you get through Fellowship of the Ring, you're like, I can't wait to see what happens next. Great. If you get through all 3 of those movies and you're like, it wasn't for me, I'm not going to tell you like some sort of weird machete order of watch Fellowship, then go watch Hobbit 1, and then go watch Two Towers, then go watch Hobbit 2, and go. But like,
and then the first 3 episodes of Rings of Power. Yeah.
But like, people are kind of conditioned now to be used to franchises having weird viewing orders that they ask that question. So I do wonder how that affects like something like Rings of Power with now, or Hunt for Gollum now. Like maybe Rings of Power is the one that'll be like the more triumphant one, and people will be like, do I really want to revisit the Jackson films and like this weird story that takes place in the middle of Fellowship of the Ring? Maybe not, and maybe people don't go, right? It's going to get to the point where you see Ian McKellen in Gandalf gear and Viggo Mortensen in Aragorn gear, and you're like, maybe they are too old for this now. Like, there will be a certain point where we hit that, where people kind of look at like Arnold as the Terminator in like the newest one, and they're like, I think we're done with this.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so I guess we'll see how things play out. But all in all, it could be a lot worse, and there is reason for optimism as it pertains to Lord of the Rings, for sure.
So are we going to go? Let's go to the one where we maybe not as optimistic.
Well, this is a weird one because on screen I'm very optimistic, but off screen is where things I don't even want to say start to get hairy. I should say continue to be hairy
for 13 years.
This has been a fucking 13-year like thing here, and it's tough because like as somebody who is, I just finished Storm of Swords recently.
Good.
Yeah. I'm not this. I've been waiting 13 years for the last last 2 A Song of Ice and Fire books to come out.
Time out. Act like you've been waiting 13 years and get really upset. All right.
Oh, yeah. This little fucker. No, like I don't want to seem like I'm, in the trenches on the struggle bus as much as a lot of people have.
Not a real fan. Exactly.
I know. SMH, not a real fan. But like, my heart goes out to those people because even as I now hit, cross the halfway mark and start to work my way through the back end of these books, there's almost a part of it for me that is, I don't want to say that I'm less, like it doesn't feel like there's that much. Let me think of how to put it. I guess in layman's terms, the best way to say it is just that I don't feel as excited to read through them now, just because I know that ultimately I'm going to be left off at a spot where it's unfinished, and I'm going to have this sense of, uh, like this hole inside that I'm just going to be constantly wondering, like, what the hell could have happened? Because at this point, and Jordan, I don't, do you have his full quote in front of you so we can kind of,
I'll pull it up because you retweeted it, right? So it
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
it's on our account. So let me go find it real quick.
But the kind of gist of it was that he said he wasn't sure that he was going to be able to finish Winds of Winter. Uh,
Unfortunately, I am 13 years late. Every time I say that, I'm like, how can I be 13 years late? I don't know. It happens a day at a time, but that's still a priority, and I do hope to visit it. A lot of people are already writing obituaries for me. They're saying, "Oh, he'll never be finished." Maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm alive right now. I seem pretty vital.
I don't know. It seems like that news made you so mad that it turned your camera off. So that's that explains it all right there. But no,
That
man,
was the weirdest thing too. I'm not sure why that happened.
don't know. But yeah, it just very discouraging to hear. Um, I don't know. Like I put up a tweet from our account yesterday, just kind of detailing my thoughts on it, and my thoughts are that I think at this point he willfully does not want to finish the series, whether it's because of the critical reception to the end of the show and that ending was very much in lockstep with what he had prepared, or he kind of wants to have this sort of uh, Tolkien urban legend folklore thing around himself where it's like, oh my God, there's all this work that didn't get finished and like just release it and, all this kind of stuff. And I do think that there is a logical pushback as to why, if George were to pass away before finishing this, it would not be the same as Tolkien leaving work unfinished. But I want to hear your thoughts on it and see if your kind of rebuttal is what my pushback to that would be.
I'm not as pessimistic about like why he is doing it. I honestly just think he is having the hardest time writing
13
it.
years?
Yeah.
13 years?
Yeah, I do think that. And I think part of it is because I do think the ending we got in the show was what he wanted. And I think now he saw the reaction and he's like, "Oh my god." And so I think he's rethinking things. I think he's going slow and I think he's also just getting gratification from other things. Going to see his work get made in a show like A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, right? Which is one he's very happy with the work of. Plus he's also like he still writes and like puts together other things at this time, like Fire and Blood, and he's working on a second one of that. He's working on, I don't know, his Wild Card series. Is he's had a lot on his plate, and I think he's getting more instant gratification from those. That it's putting off the work that he doesn't want to do right now because he's worried about how it will be received. That is my read on it, and because I think it's a little cynical to just be like he wants some sort of like legacy or whatever,
Mm,
But I mean, look, maybe he does. Maybe it's all ego. I don't know, but I give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt. I in that sense, and I just think it's like gotten away from him so much, and he doesn't know how to finish it. And I think part of that is aided by how people reacted to the show.
yeah.
Um, because I think while if it was all like, okay, we understand Bran as the king, we understand Danny turning mad, but it was rushed, I think he would be a little bit more happy and be maybe making more progress. But it was like a firm rejection people had of Bran is the king. Why did Danny go mad? What is this? And I think he's looking at that part, and he can excuse the D&D mess where he's like, all right, I didn't give them enough stuff. They were going through and they kind of botched some stuff, whatever. But I think he sees some of the reaction when people are like, that's how the Night King dies. This is how, or like, that's how the White Walkers defeat it. Danny's the real mad person, like blah, 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 blah. And he's looking at that, and that was in his notes or something. And he's like, ooh, a lot of the stuff people are not resonating with are the things I am building to actively.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably where I land on it as well. And in reference to the Tolkien point that I made, I do think it's a lot different in terms of like Tolkien at least finished his main series, right? We
Right,
got
right.
the Lord of the Rings series, like his works were unfinished just because he passed away in the middle of making them. Whereas George, it almost feels like if he were to pass away, and heaven forbid, I hope he lives to be fucking 100. You know what I mean? But like, it almost
120.
would feel
Gotta give
like
him time for the seventh book.
yeah,
120.
right. But it almost feels like if he were to pass away with Winds of Winter not being finished, it wouldn't have this. It would almost be like, he was just lazy for 13 years. Like it's not like this mythos of like what could have been. He was midway through it. It's like, no, he was midway through it for a decade and a half and then just didn't do anything. So I don't think it would hit quite the same. I just don't know whether his ego would allow him to see that, or if he's just so up there in the clouds. And I don't know George. Obviously, none of us do. But like, I don't know, like you said, I feel like he's got a little bit of a bigger ego than he lets on when you hear him talk and do these interviews and stuff. And it's one of those two things for sure in my mind. Either he's just not confident, the point that you just laid out, or that he wants the what if of his unfinished works to live longer than, to live on for eternity, so to speak.
Give us What If Game of Thrones. That just made me
Oh
think of it.
God.
Give us that. George, stop
No.
writing Winds of Winter and start writing What If comic books of Game of
Oh,
Thrones.
gee, okay, good. I'm glad you're joking because I was just going to push back on that big fucking time. I was going to be like,
What if
I am revoking your
Danny
folk
didn't go
card over.
mad?
Yeah.
um, okay, let's talk about. We got the book stuff out of the way. Let's talk about House of the Dragon, which
Let's do
we
it.
talked about Game of Thrones itself, but last time we're going to talk House of Dragons, Game of the Dragons, as I'm sure
Game of
some
the
people have called
Dragon
it, or
Thrones. Yes.
House of the Thrones. Um, I enjoy this show. I didn't think season 2 was bad. I've been wanting to say this on the podcast for a while. We haven't gotten to it. I think people are, especially when they say it's like dog shit or whatever. It's like, all right, you guys are not watching enough television. I'm sorry
Yeah.
if you think this is that. I don't like maybe some of the decisions, and George, we know he doesn't like a lot
Yeah.
of the decisions.
He's got no problem sitting down and cranking out a 2,000 word blog. Like, I'll say that much. Imagine if he put that effort into writing 2,000 words of his own book, but I digress.
But the issue I guess have is from what I read of the sources, and what I mean by that is they originally were going to have 10 episodes. They cut it to 8 during the writer strike. By the time they were starting to move on this thing, instead of reorganizing those episodes into like those 10 episodes into 8, they just said we're shooting the first 8. And that's why that finale doesn't have a finale feel.
Yeah.
I think they kind of edited it to make it feel like a finale with the montage at the end, but I don't think that they went in knowing when they were writing these, like, this is the finale. So I give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. I give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when it comes to George's issues as well,
Mhm.
because it's an adaptation. These things change. But if what they have planned for like season 3 and 4 that he alluded to is what they're going to do, I probably will have some issues. This is
Mhm.
a book of George's I have read. There are certain things that need to happen in it, I think. And I don't like how much they're focusing on Rhaenyra and what's her
Allison?
name? Alicent as this like love torn people that could have gotten together if only things have fallen their certain ways type of thing. These are people that hated each other in the books. And I'm fine if they don't want to go that overboard with it, but it's like the events that happen after this that Allison is seemingly going to be okay with seems like a tough hill to climb
Mm.
mentally for me. So I that's where I kind of sit on House of the Dragon. I love the first two seasons. I think season 1 is obviously better than season 2 still at this point, but
Mm.
I didn't hate it the way everybody else did. I'm just worried for what's to come due to George's warning.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I have not read Fire and Blood, unlike you, so I don't think I have as much of a marriage to the source material in that way. But I will say that I do have a bit of an issue with how formulaic the show has felt. Um, the one of the coolest things about Game of Thrones was that when you were watching every week, whether it was episode 3, episode 10, the premiere, no matter what, there was always a real chance of some big shit popping off, of somebody dying, of somebody being betrayed, or some kind of cataclysmic type event for a house or a character or what have you. Every week felt like you were opening up a new present in that regard. Whereas House of the Dragon so far, as much as it's had some awesome moments, it has felt very like, okay, we're gonna give you a big moment in the premiere, and then we're gonna give you a big moment in episode 4 at the halfway mark, and then we'll give you something in the finale where it's almost become a bit predictable in that way. And that's just something that I hope we see a little bit less of in the upcoming seasons. But like you said, I was a lot less harsh on this season than a lot of people were. I loved all the stuff with Damon at Harrenhal, and I know that was a big thing that people were like, "What the hell?" You know, like looking at their watch the whole time, just waiting for him to leave that damn castle. And maybe it's just because I'm such a big fan of that setting in the books. Like, it's one of those things that in the books it's much more fleshed out with the history and the the quote unquote ghosts, so to speak. It's just a location that I really like. So the more time that we can spend there, the better. But a lot of the things that people complained about being slow in season 2 are things that I actually kind of appreciated, especially knowing, like you said, about how it wasn't designed to be that way. There was designed to be 2 extra episodes on the back of this thing that were going to really pop off this war that's coming in season 3. I also think they would have gotten a lot more grace in that regard if we weren't in this time now where we're getting 2.5 years in between seasons of shows.
Yeah, yep.
Like, if we knew next summer that House of the Dragon season 3 was coming, I think people would have been a little less harsh on the ending.
Yeah, because I think one of the issues that they're running across right now is that what season 1 is really building up this war. Season 2 starts building up the war, and when it feels like it's about to kick off, the season ends.
Yeah.
And now there's another 2 years, 2.5 years between seasons, and you're like, all right, so is this war ever actually happening? I can understand people's complaint about that. I just don't know how much of that is on that because I feel like part of it was also I think Zaslav or somebody cut some of the budget and that's why they had to cut the 2 episodes. All that kind of stuff is what happens. Um, I won't be shocked either if season 3 is, you guessed it, 8 episodes and they have to speed some stuff up. But I think that might work in their favor actually of speeding some stuff up.
Yeah.
Um,
I would be
so
stunned. I would be beyond stunned if season 3 wasn't like 5 to 6 out of 8 episodes, just balls to the wall, crazy like set pieces and all that stuff.
it has to be
It,
soon because there's a lot of stuff that happens that we got to get to. And one of
yeah,
the questions I do have, I guess, is if this is, I think what it's through season 4, right? Didn't they announce that officially?
I believe
Is
so.
the last season?
I
They,
don't know if it's the last season, but I know that that's what they have planned because there's like further stuff they could do, right, with the Brackens and the Blackwaters and all that stuff. Like House of Fire and Blood, and you've read it, I haven't, but doesn't it extend beyond this whole Rhaenyra and Alicent kind of beef? Like, doesn't it go
yeah,
into like it's basically a documentation of all the years of the Targaryen, not just this one little era that we're focused on now.
Correct. And actually, the stuff that happens in the first season is almost halfway through the book. They
Okay.
skip a lot of that stuff to even get to these characters. August 5th, 2024, House of the Dragon to end with season 4, season 3 to begin production in early 2025. So
Really? Wow. Okay.
they will have to go balls to the wall next season and probably in season 4. And I just wonder where we will end because there is a pretty definite ending for some of these characters. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I had read some good theories on where I think the show could have ended, but with it ending in season 4 and with us still not having really started the war, I don't know if we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Um, which would be maybe we will because it's a really good role for the Starks. So I'd be really curious if they
Mhm.
would do that. It would kind of end on a very good note, um, and would have our hero Stark characters in it, in the
Yeah.
sense of like how much we love that family.
Yeah. Like Benjen
Um,
and yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of down on the state of Game of Thrones. That's what I'll wrap up my thing is especially now if this is a mobile game.
Yeah.
So we got the mobile game. We've got. By the way, have you ever played the Telltale Game of Thrones game?
I have not, and I really wish that I could because people have said horrible things. By the way, I meant Kragan when I said Benjen before. Kragan
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Um, but I've heard that it's like the biggest abomination piece of shit game ever created, and I want to play
Really,
it so
I
bad.
enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I enjoyed it.
Really?
Now, I mean,
Okay.
I love Telltale games though, like
Me
the
too.
Walking Dead games, the
Fuck yeah.
Batman game. All those are really great. Wolf Among Us. Is it like the best game ever? No, but I would say it's the best Lord of the Rings game. I mean, not best Lord of the Rings, best Game of Thrones games we've had because we don't
Mhm.
have a lot. We don't have a lot. Um, so we have
That's the
that.
only one.
We have the
Oh no, I think there's more.
possibility of the books not finishing. We have. I would just worry about them breezing through the remaining 2 seasons of House of the Dragon. The plus side is I'm excited for next summer. That's when A Night of Seven Kingdoms is supposed to
Yes.
release. We'll have episodes about that as it drops. I'm
And
excited about
the
that. They said
cool
they're
thing
doing an
about that one.
Aegon Conquest one too, but it's like at a certain point, I feel like we're getting and a movie. They're developing a movie as well.
Okay, so this is what I want to touch on because as of now, there's like supposedly an animated series in development and two other shows and a movie and all this stuff.
They were talking
And
about bringing the
can't,
Jon Snow show back again because they'd canceled that.
I can't help but just I'm having Star Wars PTSD right now, man. Every single thing that we're dealing with them over the years and announcing all these projects and then 4 out of 5 of them get shelved and are never heard from again. Like it feels like because Game of Thrones has also had a few things that were kind of quietly canceled that were in production already. They shot a pilot for something like a year or two ago, and they're just like, nope, we're actually not going to put that show out. I forget exactly what it was, but they're starting to dip their toe into some pretty dangerous territory with setting fans' expectations and then letting them down. And I don't know, man. I just don't want to see them go down that Star Wars path, because there is so much potential for great stories you can tell in Westeros. The Doom of Valeria, like you said, Aegon's Conquest, like rich, deep lore. And it's just a matter of putting pen to paper and then putting that paper bringing it to life. And there's just some kind of disconnect there where they're having a lot of trouble in terms of getting things out and also getting things out that do make it in a timely fashion. So I'm with you. I'm a little less optimistic on this side of things than I am in Lord of the Rings, which is unfortunate because I'm such a bigger Westeros fan than I am Lord of the Rings, as much as I love Lord of the Rings. But yeah, especially when you dealt that horrible blow to me of knowing that this video game that I've been thinking about for 3 weeks straight is now going to be like fucking Candy Crush. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see, man. But I am excited for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It almost feels like that one's going to have a little bit more of the classic fantasy adventure, vibe to it, where it's just the unassuming hero and his sidekick kind of making their way through the world and finding their way. I think that one's going to be good, but beyond that, I'm skeptical to say the least in every other department.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon and that whole franchise as it continues to move forward. But we will, of course, continue coverage of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's supposed to release in the summer, is what somebody leaked, apparently. So
Yeah,
they'll probably want it around that time they had House of the Dragon.
like
So
July is usually their sweet spot for this
the
kind of
good thing
stuff.
for that, I guess, is that like while House of the Dragon does take a little longer to come back, they're able to be like, here's another, Lord, I keep wanting to do that. Another Game of Thrones series
Yeah,
while we buy
something to
time to
bridge the gap.
release to do the next one.
Especially if it's good, man. At the end of the day, all it
Yeah.
matters is if the shit's good. If it's good, everything else will fall into place. If they come out and they put out a banger show with this and they put out a banger season with House of the Dragon season 3, they're going to get a lot of that good grace back. It's
Yep.
just a matter of actually doing it.
And we'll be able to revisit our state of this
Yeah.
franchise
And be
and
like,
give it a
boy,
better
we were
grade.
stupid. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when George like randomly drops Winds of Winter next month, and you're like, "Whoa!"
That's the only hope. The only hope we have left is that he's trolling at this point. It's the only hope. Because if he's
I
genuine in
could
the
buy
things
it.
that he's saying, I mean, I could too. He seems like the type. He'd be like, "It's actually coming
I
out
mean,
next
especially
month."
like his quote that's going around is a little facetious when he's like,
It is.
"People have written my obituaries, but I'm still alive." Um,
Yeah.
I could see him being like a little bit of a troll, but I also think I don't know. I would have a hard time not trolling at this point because of people giving me crap, and like at a certain point it's like, you know what, I know what you want, and you want the book, and I know you want info on when the book's coming, but because you're treating me like this, I'm not going to give you the news. You will get the book when you get the book.
This is when I talk about the ego, though, because that's shitty. Because people have been waiting for this book for 13 years. Like, if they were breaking his balls a year later, I'd be like, okay, yeah, have some fun
Right,
with
right,
it.
right.
But at this point, dude, you've had people on the hook for this, who have bought every single one of your books and have spent countless time because these books are no fucking joke.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working my way through them for like a year and a half now, and I'm only through 3 of them. Like,
Well, my pace of reading them is George's pace of writing. I'm on Clash of Kings for the
basically,
last 12 years. All right. So
yeah, yeah.
I got time. I'm like, why rush if he's not rushing? So I got time.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I feel about it. If he's trolling, I won't be happy about it, but I will be happy that the book comes out. But I guess we'll see.
Well, that'll wrap us up here. Our next episode will probably be War of the Rohirrim when it comes out. Like I said, I'm going to see when I can fit that into my schedule to go see it. And you can follow us on all of our social media at fantasyfolkpod. I have us on Blue Sky as well now, right? We're on everywhere, so you can
Yeah,
follow us there. On our other shows, right now we're also talking Skeleton Crew. If you can't get enough of us, Skeleton Crew, the new Star Wars show, we're talking that on the Pod Awakens. Over on Elseworlds DC Fan Podcast, I'm talking Creature Commandos. That'll be coming out next week, like my discussion about the first 2 episodes as we kick off James Gunn's DCU. Whenever a Superman trailer drops, we'll be over there on Elseworlds talking about that. On the Marvel side of things, What If Season 3 is dropping later this month. My friend Jack is going to be on talking about it. Ron, you might be on. I forget where we landed on that. So, if you want to hear more stuff in the nerd realms, that's where we all are. That's called To the Infinity Saga and Beyond. You can check that out. Yeah, that's all of our plugs. All right, have a great rest of your week. We will catch you next time when we talk War of the Rohirrim here on the Fantasy Folk.